Tonight, pitching independence, ditching liquor stores. The throne speech sets the stage for the fall legislative sitting. And borrowing money becomes even more expensive as the key interest rate goes up to make inflation go down. Plus, growing up, vertical agriculture offers a way for farmers to harvest crops indoors all year round.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It's Wednesday, October 26th. CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. The fall sitting of the Saskatchewan Legislative Assembly got underway today with the government's throne speech. It's promising more independence for Saskatchewan and a more welcoming environment for private business. This, as the government says, it plans to close down some of its own businesses. Adam Hunter has the details.
An outdoor ceremony to kick things off, then inside and down to business, with Lieutenant Governor Russ Morasti delivering the government's throne speech. Much of it focused on past government announcements and promises. But the speech did offer more details on how the government plans to carve out more provincial autonomy, namely amending the Saskatchewan Act, which established the province in 1905, and creating new legislation, which will be known as the Saskatchewan First Act.
The overarching focus of this is to provide certainty for the investment community and to ensure that this province is doing all that we can to really reassert our constitutional right, which is very, very clear in the Constitution that was reconstituted in 1982, that we do have the right to develop our natural resources.
Mo says the legislation will not violate Canada's Constitution. He says that federal climate policies are scaring away investment, and he pointed to one company's decision not to build a canola crushing facility in the province's southeast. Meanwhile, the government plans to shut down some of their own businesses, with major changes coming to Saskatchewan liquor and gaming. The province will close all provincially operated retail stores while maintaining its wholesale operations.
We're exiting the retail sector of SLGA. It's not a core business of government in our view. We've seen private stores that have been operating for decades now under various governments of various stripes in the province, and we're going to be exiting that business.
The NDP says the changes to SLGA will cost about 350 people their jobs. Opposition leader Carla Beck says the government is recycling old promises and not addressing rising cost of living and healthcare issues.
We really didn't see anything to address those issues in this throne speech. And again, I think it's more evidence of a government that is increasingly out of touch, increasingly insular and talking to themselves or talking behind closed doors and not actually focused on the needs, the concerns, and the hopes of the people of this province.
Beck will get her first chance to debate the throne speech with Premier Mo on Thursday. Adam Hunter, CBC News, Regina.
Incidentally, Mr. Tweed, you are the first Saskatchewan MLA to be sworn in under the reign of King Charles III.
Newly elected MLA Nathaniel Teed made history in more than one way today. Teed won the Saskatoon-Meewasin seat for the NDP last month. With this ceremony, he became the first openly gay MLA to be sworn into the legislature. One of the guests at the legislature today raised some eyebrows. Convicted killer Colin Thatcher was invited to attend the throne speech by Sask Party MLA Lyle Stewart. Thatcher is a former Conservative cabinet minister who served time for murdering his wife. The NDP says his invitation is ironic, given the government's pledge to be tough on crime.
Colin Thatcher is a citizen who has gone through the justice system, gone through the courts, did his time in incarceration. He's now paid that debt to society that society has deemed for him to do, and he's living his life as a citizen of our province.
What kind of message do you think that sends to the public?
He has a right to be here.
On the year that where we have
doesn't matter. No, he has a right to be here just like anybody else. He is a free citizen.
A sentencing hearing took place in Saskatoon today for a man who pleaded guilty to sexually assaulting a dozen women. Cecil Wolf says he was performing traditional First Nations medicine. The Crown and Defence made a joint submission asking for 9.5 years. No decision came down today. But Dan Zakreski has learned more about how Wolf carried out the assaults. A warning, some of the details are graphic.
The pattern of assaults emerged from the agreed statement of facts from 12 women. The victims said they had reached out to Cecil Wolf, a respected Cree medicine man, for help with everything from depression to cancer. He'd arranged to meet with them at homes and hotels and asked them to wear skirts and to remove their bras. Regardless of the medical complaints, Wolf would end up fondling their breasts and digitally penetrating their vaginas. Then he'd claim to have removed bad medicine in the form of cat's claws, snakeskins, and trinkets that he'd show them. The assaults happened at Muskeg Lake, Onion Lake, and Saskatoon. The victims said they initially tolerated the touching because he was a medicine man. Crown Prosecutor Lana Morelli read out statements from the victims. She said one was fearful of the offender because he was a medicine man and had great power. Another victim said she trusted the offender was treating her in a righteous and traditional way. During the sentencing hearing, the agreed statement of facts was also presented to Wolf in Cree to confirm his guilty pleas. Now, he told the judge that although he touched the women, it was not for sexual purposes, it was for healing. But an elder said there was nothing traditional or acceptable about what Wolf did. Dan Zakreski, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Brent Gabriel was also back in court today. He's charged with sexually assaulting and exploiting residents at a group home in Hepburn. His defense lawyer told the judge she's in talks with the Crown about a possible resolution. Gabriel hasn't entered a plea yet. The alleged victims have cognitive and physical disabilities. They were in Gabriel's care at Shepherd's Villa Group Home between 1992 and 2006. The case is back in court next month. The Bank of Canada is once again making it more expensive to borrow money. The central bank boosted its key interest rate by 0.5 percentage point today. It now stands at 3.75% as the bank tries to reduce inflation. And as CBC's Anis Hadari explains, there are painful side effects.
This Nova Scotia family was excited to buy their first home earlier this year, but the game has changed. Financially speaking,
our mortgage has increased by almost 38%. So this has seriously impacted all our budget and planning.
Compared to the summer, they are paying hundreds more in interest each month.
I'm paying almost the same amount that I was paying as rent in interest payment, which is not making sense at all.
Those increases will keep coming for Canadians with variable rate mortgages and other debts. The Bank of Canada has increased interest rates for the 6th time since March. The increases are the bank's main tool to clamp down on inflation as the price of almost everything goes up.
Inflation's not going to fade away by itself. And if we ignore the problem, if we're half-hearted in our response, inflation, Canadians will have to continue enduring high inflation. They'll have to continue to cope with the anxiety of high inflation. Nobody wants that.
The central bank is trying to reduce demand in the economy to cool things off. Interest rates going up can do that. Today's hike was less than some experts predicted, but that doesn't mean Canadians should expect these moves to stop anytime soon.
Clearly, there's still some work to do in order to bring that inflation rate lower, and we, in fact, think that it's only by late 2023 that inflation will be at a place where they're going to be comfortable.
Back in Nova Scotia, the Saget family is putting off major purchases so they can keep making those increasing mortgage payments.
Maybe in future when the interest rate will going to go down, it might get better for me, but at the moment this is really a painful punishment that I'm facing.
Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
Immigrants now make up almost a quarter of this country's population. That's according to the new census, which Statistics Canada released today. Last year, more than 8.3 million people were or had been landed immigrants or permanent residents. That's the highest percentage since 1867 and the highest rate in the G7. David Thurton has more.
Immigration has always driven population growth, but never as much as in recent years, according to Stats Canada.
Immigration now accounts for the largest share of the population since Confederation, contributing to the growth of the population, the economy, and shaping who we are as a country.
According to the numbers, last year, 23% of people were born in another country, and that percentage is expected to grow, projecting to top 30% of the country's population by 2041. India, the Philippines, and China are among the most common places of birth for recent immigrants, many choosing to settle in Atlantic Canada.
We have been seeing from previous censuses that there is a decline in terms of immigrants settling in the three largest census metropolitan area, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver.
I'm enjoying my time here. The city is laid back. There's close to no traffic at all. And I'm enjoying everything here.
Jezebel Amora is among those settling in on the East Coast. She's from the Philippines. The abundance of jobs, she says, attracted her.
We have a lot of options, and that's one of the things that we were really looking for.
On that jobs front, though, Stats Canada and this professor notes, challenges remain.
Skills utilization is a big one. Trying to identify and recognize the credentials of newcomers so that we can fully utilize their human capital. And that's more difficult than it seems.
The Minister of Immigration acknowledges this challenge and says Ottawa and the provinces are working on it.
We need to continue to do more, particularly on credential recognition, and that's a partnership that we need to work on with provincial governments, by the way, to make sure that people who do come here have the ability to work in their profession.
Stats Canada also says because of immigration, the number of people identifying as Muslim, Hindu, and Sikh has more than doubled over the last 20 years. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
A new wastewater treatment facility in Lebret has earned an award for being environmentally responsible. The community officially unveiled the new centre yesterday, but it's been operating for almost a year. The facility serves about 420 people from Lebret and Star Blanket Cree Nation. It can treat wastewater at near freezing temperatures and in a way that's better for the environment.
It is very important that we find ways of treating wastewater and making it less harmful to the environment. And our process actually will help the lakes and streams and rivers become more purified, and it will help us, our children, and future generations.
The facility earned recognition from a nonprofit organization that focuses on water quality in the Qu'Appelle River system. It cost $3.3 million. These look more fit to welcome visitors to a Christmas meal than trick-or-treaters. Some people took advantage of the dump of snow in Regina on Sunday to get an early start on making snowmen. Then again, maybe the rate at which they're melting is horror-inducing after all. Stay with us. We'll be back after the break. Vertical agriculture is a way to grow all year round across Canada, and it's a growing industry in Calgary. CBC's Aaron Collins got a sneak peek at what will be one of the country's biggest indoor farms.
A new kind of farming on the rise. Crops grown not in fields but in warehouses like this one.
We will generate almost 2 million pounds of leafy greens a year.
Once completed, this complex in Calgary will have more growing space than a soccer field. Along with a sister facility in Montreal, they'll be the largest in the country.
We grow with about 5% of the water used in open field farming. We grow with no pesticides, no herbicides, no fungicides. And we grow in about a third of the time of open field farming.
The hope is that vertical farming using hydroponics can grow cheaper, more sustainable food locally, something some experts say will need to happen as our climate changes, making importing most of our fruits and vegetables a problem.
There's not enough water in California. Climate change is going to make that system unviable over the next generation. So we're going to have to find alternatives.
But there are other benefits too. This vertical ag operation is going in at the base of the iconic Calgary Tower.
What are you going to be growing here?
Everything that we can think of, really. We got
cherry tomatoes, regular Roma tomatoes, we got strawberries, herbs.
This entrepreneur wants to turn the third of Calgary's offices that sit vacant into farms.
Any space that is underutilized, vacant, looking for a solution, we're there to provide that and provide a benefit to the society.
Moving some farms from the country to the city, a way of reimagining urban life.
To have local produce grown in the building beside you, in the building where your restaurant is, or to be able to buy fresh produce in the morning if you're a downtown resident, it's fantastic.
Still, feeding Canadians from high rises remains a lofty goal.
Of course, there's a ceiling to how much of our food can be grown vertically. For now, things like potatoes, wheat, and rice have to be grown the old-fashioned way, on the ground. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. 22 model clear out is on now.
Weather specialist Ethan Williams joins us now. Ethan, how much of a chance do those snowmen have of surviving it to Halloween?
Yeah, I don't think much of a chance anymore, Natasha. Temperatures going to be warming up, especially in central portions of the province. And the warm weather in especially where we got snow this past weekend has been something that we've been waiting for. So I want to take you back in time to warmer times here. Let's go back, say, 1 week ago today. Last Wednesday, we were looking at 20-degree highs across the province, and some of those temperatures were actually record-breaking as well. And yes, we did not have any snow, at least for the most part. My, how things can change in the span of 1 week. And in fact, right now, we are sitting mostly in the single digits across the province. We were just below the freezing mark in Collins Bay, but we've bumped up a little bit and we're right at freezing right now. Not really a pattern when it comes to our current temperatures, not like the western half of the province is warmer than the east or south warmer than the north like we've seen in the past little while. It's mostly dependent on where we got the snow because that air is cooling down a little bit with the snow radiating back up. So places like Moose Jaw, Regina, Wynyard, up toward Hudson Bay, closer to the freezing mark, a little bit warmer in the southeast corner of the province, and in west central where you barely got anything over the weekend, it's a little bit warmer still. Now, another thing fueling our temperatures is our jet stream, well to our south here, and that's why we are much cooler. But the jet stream is kind of playing some tricks on temperatures across the country today. Cold spot Eureka Nunavut at -30, but you can see how the jet stream surges here through the Maritimes, 23 degrees in Miramichi, New Brunswick, record-breaking temperatures through the Maritimes. But for us, I don't think we're going to get that warm, but we are going to see some warmer temperatures. Zonal flow with the jet stream. That means that the mostly flowing from west to east without any real troughs or ridges or anything like that. And that is going to keep temperatures pleasant as we head into the weekend and some sunny conditions. But watch the colors here get really close together, and that means we're in for some wind. Now, in terms of our conditions tonight, we are looking at cloudy skies with showers and flurries through the north, mostly clear in the southern half of the province. Tomorrow, a sunny day for the southern half, and that low pressure system moves in. That wind gradient gets a little closer together. And we are looking for some showers in the northern portion of the province as that low pressure system brings that winds to much of the province. And then Friday, it looks like we're going to be clearing out a little bit. Winds tonight going to start to pick up in the southwest, close to 40 kilometers an hour. And then they really intensify heading through the day tomorrow between 50 and 60 kilometers an hour out of the southwest. And then on Friday, really as that low passes by in the far north, we're looking at gusts potentially close to 50 kilometers an hour once again. In Regina, once we get past the wind, we're actually looking at not a bad weekend here. Double-digit temperatures. Trick-or-treaters on Monday will be treated to some very warm temperatures and even some overnight lows that could stay above the freezing mark. Saskatoon well above normal for this time of year. Again, some gusty conditions possible on Thursday and Sunday. And then, Natasha, we're just going to ignore those last 2 days on the forecast. I know it gets a little cooler, but hey, it's going to be warm in the meantime.
Well, I like those numbers for Halloween. Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Now that's quite a different sight than the little snowmen we saw in Regina. It looks like an entirely different season in Quebec. A CBC News drone took a gorgeous flight through a forest just outside of Trois-Rivières. We'll be back after the break. Two Canadian women and two children who were living in a Syrian detention center reserved for families of ISIS fighters arrived in Canada today. The RCMP says one of the women is now facing 4 criminal charges related to terrorism. Ashley Burke has more.
RCMP officers arrested Umayma Shway.
A rare repatriation followed by a series of terrorism charges laid all at once.
She is facing 4 charges of the criminal code.
The RCMP say they opened their investigation into Quebec woman Umayma Shway when she was just 19 years old in 2014.
According to the investigation, Ms. Shway allegedly traveled to Syria and Iraq to join the Islamic State terrorist group. In Syria, it is alleged that she participated in terrorist activities in the name of the Islamic State.
She was later taken prisoner and held at this Syrian detention camp, home to ISIS fighters' wives and children. Now Canada has brought her home, and RCMP arrested her in Montreal, where she appeared virtually in court today. The Crown objected to her release.
The accused may evade and leave the jurisdiction and not show up for court. The second one is reasonable grounds to fear that she will commit a criminal offense and or obstruct justice in any way.
The second Canadian who was repatriated, Kimberly Pullman, was also arrested today, but she's not charged with terrorism-related offenses.
Leads me to believe that either the Public Prosecution Service or the RCMP, security services writ large, don't see the public benefit in her prosecution at this time.
Leah West traveled to this detainment camp in 2019 and interviewed Pullman. Pullman said she became disenchanted with ISIS, tried to travel home, but was captured.
She seemed to be someone who generally wanted to ensure that no other woman would pursue the path that she had taken, and that she was quite repentant and did seriously regret the choices she'd made.
This video shows Canadian officials traveled to northeastern Syria for the repatriation, which also involved 2 children. Now the government's facing questions about whether it will bring home others.
It depends heavily on the individual circumstances of a given situation. I think in certain instances when you're dealing with criminal behavior that's been conducted overseas, that doesn't automatically lead to the repatriation of an individual to Canada.
Human Rights Watch estimates about 4 dozen Canadians remain detained in Syria, many of them children, and is continuing to call on the federal government to bring them home immediately. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Ethan is back with another look at our forecast.
And we'll be sitting at the freezing mark tomorrow in Regina at 8 a.m. Natasha, the winds starting to pick up out of the southwest a little bit with some sun and cloud, and then those will intensify as we get to the noon hour, close to 40 kilometers an hour. Could be a little bit over that as we head through the afternoon. We are close to our daytime high by that point when we hit 4 degrees. Saskatoon just at 1 degree at 8 a.m. Again, winds will intensify with some sun and cloud as we hit the afternoon. We'll be closer to 10 by the afternoon in Saskatoon. Now, Maria grabbed this great shot out at Katepwa Lake. This was taken actually before the snow, obviously, as you can see, and she apologized to me for sending it in late, but I say, Maria, don't apologize because we appreciate reminders of the before times, Natasha.
Before times. Good way of putting it, Ethan. Thanks.
You bet.
A Nakota Assiniboine woman who grew up in Saskatchewan has a film debuting in Regina tonight. Sarah Lise MacArthur plays a mother escaping domestic violence with her daughter in the film Broken Angel.
Tanis? Tanis, stop messing around.
The movie has a mostly Indigenous cast. Broken Angel debuts at 7 o'clock at the Cineplex in the Southland Mall. It then heads on a tour of North American film festivals. That's it for us tonight. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/Sask or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Dan Plaster will be back at 11.